welcome to our show. I love the Nifty Fifties. The 50s, a time of joy, prosperity, and progress. The Cold War, Civil Rights Movement, and the rise of pop culture, all highlights of this era. From Elvis Presley and McDonald's, the Korean War and the Red Scare, the 50s are a decade we will assuredly remember.
The Cold War was a war fought by the US and the USSR on both political and economic fronts. The US found that the Soviet system threatened the American way of life. It is called the Cold War due to the fact that neither side had any actual outright warfare because neither of them wanted to start a war that could potentially turn to World War III. It involved the U.S. policy of containment, aka the Marshall Plan, which is the U.S. effort to control the spread of communism by pledging $12 billion in aid to European nations. The Red Scare was a period of American paranoia. Americans had hysteric fear of communism, atomic weapons, World War III, and of each other. Americans had a growing belief that communists were trying to infiltrate the government and society, which was called McCarthyism. McCarthyism was prevalent in the early 1950s, and during that period of mass hysteria, many people were accused of being communists. The Rosenbergs were an American husband and wife who were accused of being spies for the USSR and supplying them with atomic energy secrets. They became the first U.S. citizens convicted and executed for espionage during U.S. peacetime.
The Highway Act of 1956 was placed in order to help expand the nation's highways. People were able to move out to the suburbs and live away from the city and still commute. The suburbs began to grow and most of the nation's population began to live in them. But the highways didn't only serve the purpose of civilians. Instead, they were built to help planes take off and military equipment to be transported from over the overpasses. Bomb shelters were also bought and installed in people's backyards. They would hold food, water, and other necessities that would help them survive in case of a catastrophe. Their only option was to die, dig, or get out, and thus people began to dig and build shelters. After the development of the hydrogen bomb by both the American and Soviet Union government, people became more paranoid about their safety. School children were often taught the drill of duck and cover. They were told if they saw a bright flash of light to duck under their desks for protection, and if they were outside, they should run to a shelter or duck against a wall. Music in the 50s had a lot of influence on the birth and rise of rock and roll. One of the huge celebrities from the 50s was Elvis Presley. He managed to capture the minds and hearts of people everywhere with his catchy tunes, his charms, and his infectious dance moves, and he became a pop culture icon and idol.
The Korean War, a battle fought in an attempt to hinder the spread of communism, has become a forgotten war. The battle between North Korea and South Korea had split the two opposing forces at the 38th parallel. North Korea had already fallen to the force of communism and to the heavy hand of the USSR. However, South Korea was still worth saving. So, President Truman had decided to get involved, along with 15 other countries, in this war. However, he had never gone to Congress for an official declaration of war, just a police action, he called it, and thus it has become a forgotten war. When the US and all 15 other countries had invaded North Korea, they had found themselves in a never-ending game of give and take. There had never been any progress forward for either side.
The pop culture during the 1950s was very exciting. The period after World War II, when people began to commit to a familial life, there were many babies born, and during this time, all the babies born were known as baby boomers.
The Civil Rights Movement was going on in the U.S. during the Cold and Korean Wars. African Americans were still facing prejudice even though they were under the separate but equal system that allowed for segregation to be legal as long as the aspects and quality of both sides were equal. Rosa Parks began the Montgomery bus boycott on December 1, 1955. She refused to move to the back of the bus when a white man boarded and was arrested for her refusal. After that happened, 50,000 African Americans organized a boycott against the Montgomery bus system that lasted for 381 days. Every class cooperated with the boycott, and everyone followed under Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s lead. The purpose behind the boycott was to enforce change in social segregation through the creation of economic pressures, and it worked because in November of 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation of buses was illegal.
Little Rock Nine were a group of African American students who had been turned away from entering the Arkansas Central High School. The National Guard was then called to escort them to and from school and home every single day. This was in demand to integrate the educational system and promote equality. Well, folks, that's all we have for the Nifty Fifties. Tune in next time for a special edition on the Swanky 60s.
Just say it.
Welcome to our show. I love the Did you start it? I didn't talk about it. So like in the corner of your eye you can see as it's coming, but nobody can really see your eyes because your eyes are practically closed, right? Because you're reading the paper, alright? And then
Come on, throw it. Throw it.
Okay, so you know what you're doing? Just pretend you're looking down at the paper.
Okay, no.
Right? Wait, should I give you a signal? Or I'm gonna throw it?
Shut up. Okay, well, that's necessarily the pop culture of you throw
No,
it.
you know what you do? Your hands.
She's
2, 3. I even give you a countdown.
I thought you were gonna wait till I started. Oh boy.